In one of those incidents in 2019, she said Kilmar allegedly grabbed her by the hair and dragged her that way out of their car onto the street.
All right, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm sick of his fat face. And I know I probably shouldn't say it that way, but I am so sick of seeing this person's fat, sloppy face on TV, on my phone, on my laptop. It's all about this fat ass and his fat ass girlfriend who I'm sick of too. Sorry, I believe that's his wife, or that's what they say, but I am so sick of him and his fat wife. I'm 100% fine if they're just both in El Salvador.
The Maryland man.
And I am tired of hearing the same things over and over. A Maryland man, a Maryland father. That is an El Salvadorian man that has been living illegally in Maryland, while occasionally, or at least at points, beating his wife.
And I kept trying to get to the door basement to try to open the door, and then like he pushed me. So I saw a neighbor walking his dog, and I opened the door and I was like, help. And then when he heard me, like he grabbed me from my hair and then he slapped me. Even on Wednesday, he hit me like around like 3 a.m. He would just wake up and like hit me. Before I went to my daughter's birthday party, he slapped me 3 times. And then last week I did call the police. My sister called the police because he hit me in front of my sister.
The most recent, if you're not aware, is that in 2018, his baby mama's former baby daddy had sworn in an affidavit, actual legal document, that he was uncomfortable with his children being in her custody or in her care because her boyfriend at that time, Kilmar Obrego Garcia, was a gang member.
An MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland has been nothing short of despicable.
A federal judge in Louisiana who was appointed by President Trump said that he was concerned that there was, quote, no meaningful process.
I've heard if they deny him his due process, then they can deny anyone their due process. Well, if anybody's acting like him, they deserve to have their due process denied. I'll say it outright. Thank God for not respecting due process. Where were they respecting due process when they came into this country? Where was the due process in that situation? Seems like at those points, these people and their supporters don't mind when due process gets shucked. When it's illegals deciding just to come to this country and live here for years on end, and in a lot of cases leech off the system and commit crime, how many ways are these people supposed to piss on our rug before we're allowed to say, yeah, I don't think you're a good fit for this country? What's the answer there? Bueller? All of these people are auditioning to be citizens of this country. All the way through, even after they've been naturalized. Everybody loves to talk about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. Well, the Constitution was written by and for white people. So if you ain't that, get out. Just play. I've gone too far, all right? I'm MAGA. I drank the Kool-Aid. Say whatever you want, but I'm only half joking. But the reason I joke that way is because I don't understand why we are trying to do all sorts of mental gymnastics to keep people in this country that not only do not belong here, but aren't good or doing good while they are here. And I really do feel if certain people are making problems in this country and they're not legal anyway, there's only a certain amount of due process that we need to extend to them, because this guy has already been given due process. It just wasn't due process as many times as they wanted and until they got the result that they wanted. That's what bothers me about this particular situation. If you look into it or you read into it, in 2019, they pulled him over in Tennessee and they suspected him of trafficking because all the signs lined up with trafficking. But ICE was too lazy or too busy. They said they didn't want to come do anything about it. So the cop went ahead and let them go. But it looked shady enough that they actually took note of it and had tried to get ICE involved. So when they say that he's never been convicted of anything here, yeah, I'm sure he's been very lucky. So I don't know why, again, Americans, Democrats specifically, are riding so hard for this guy. Is that going to be a proud memory for you to talk to your kids about? Remember when we stood up for that gangbanger from MS-13 that was being taken out of the country? That was a good cause, right? That's the kind of stuff you want your children knowing knowing that you stood behind when they were younger, right? That's showing them the right example. A man that has every sign that he's actually part of this particular gang, but for some reason, we can't do anything about it. We can't just get rid of him. We can't just be like, good riddance, glad you're gone. You needed to go anyway. We got to pretend it's a whole production. And I know when I talk about this, there will inevitably be people in my comments. They're like, well, look at your face and look at the number of tattoos you have. And if you get pulled over, you don't think that you're going to go to El Salvador? Well, that's why I went ahead and made sure that I had a real ID. One of the ones with the star, so it makes it even easier. And this isn't a paid sponsorship by Real ID. I wish they would pay me. But I would not be offended if an officer were to ask me for identification because I am brown and I have tattoos and I fit a particular bill. Because the fact of the matter is that isn't happening to a lot of people. Has it happened? So far. Yes, there was a poor young man in Tucson, Arizona.
I was just walking around in the city in Tucson.
During that stroll, Jose says he was approached by an officer questioning his legal status.
He said, where are you from? And I said, from New Mexico. Can you show me a birth certificate?
But he didn't have ID with him. That's when Jose found himself handcuffed and charged with illegally entering the United States.
He ended up it's not funny, but he did spend 9 days in jail. There's going to be mistakes. If you're going to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. That's and I know some people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but this is how tired of it I am. And also, this is how much I understand that if we're going to have a solution, then we are going to have to put up with a little bit of discomfort. And if that means an officer asking to see my ID because I do fit a particular bill and some things can be misread, I 100% accept all of this about myself, because what we're trying to do is get rid of a certain element that may or may not look like me. And so if I get asked for my ID, what I will say to the officer is, in a very loud voice, "Here you go, officer. Thank you for doing your job. You can never be too sure." What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. I know I'm not supposed to be that mean about it, but I am just sick of both of their fat faces. And if you ask me, they both can go to El Salvador and eat pupusas together until the day they die, or until he rots in a prison while she sits outside waiting for him. I don't care anymore. Put money on his books if you want, sister, but either go with him or get it together. You are a United States citizen. You don't have to have this fat back beating. Okay, I admit, I got carried away. I got angry. I found myself saying things in a way that I really meant, and you should never do that, especially on a public platform. But yeah, if you don't think you're better than that, then maybe you should go to El Salvador as well, though. Like, that's where I'm at on it with this one, because I'm so tired of people trying to defend these people and not at all paying attention to the fact that if the Democrats really did care about immigrants and really did care about doing what's right, what they would do is be fighting for the gay makeup artist that got put in the El Salvadorian prison, CCOT, when he's from Venezuela and he did come here legitimately seeking asylum. Or they could really be worried about the dreamers. How many dreamers do we have in this country that have been getting kicked down the road like a tin can for how many years now? But no, instead, they pick a El Salvadorian gang member. Never mind the fact that he should have been deported. Never mind the fact that he wasn't actually given asylum. They just said that they couldn't send him back to El Salvador. And he was given no bond at a point because, as BBC puts it, he was busted for loitering. But then if you do just a little bit of extra research, like I personally ended up finding an article on NBC News, so it's not even hidden or some small publication that's putting this out. It's NBC News. But then I read on NBC News that the judge had confusion about why exactly him and the others that he was arrested with, which two of the others were also MS-13, allegedly, which we have to use that, but that's not at all. And none of this is alleged to me. It's just what it is. But when he was arrested in that Home Depot parking lot, the judge didn't want to give him bond because they said they had reason to believe that he was MS-13. MS-13 through reliable and credible sources, so they didn't want to release him on bond. And then another judge came in and backed that up. Then the article from NBC also said that they had found Abrego Garcia with just under an ounce of at the time that he got arrested at the Home Depot. And at the same time, I'm not going to act like him having a little bit of wacky tobacco is the worst thing in the world, but just short of an ounce is a lot of wacky tobacco. I've had ounces at points, but it is kind of a lot of wacky tobacco. And it at the very least lets you know that he really didn't care too much about our laws and wasn't going out of his way to try to obey them, because he would have known that, especially being an immigrant, he shouldn't have had that. Then there's a point when BBC Verify talks about the fact that he was suspected of trafficking at one point. He was trafficking construction workers, or possibly they're not even construction workers. He's just trafficking people. Who knows? He could have been working as a coyote. But when BBC Verify mentions that, they're like, it was a right-wing publication. Does it matter? Is the information correct or not? I don't care where it comes from in that way. If you were telling the truth, I wouldn't be calling you out in a negative way. The truth is the truth, whether you like it, I like it, they like it, anybody likes it. The truth is the truth. So how about you just give me the actual story and as much information as possible so I can figure out why they're holding up this Maryland father, this saint, this altar boy. Why is he being held in an El Salvadorian prison with the worst kind of people when he's never done anything wrong? He was loitering in a parking lot. Don't mention at all the fact that there was a murder investigation that they were also simultaneously looking into, that they had to ask him and his two other MS-13 friends about at the same time. But don't mention that. No, why would you do that, BBC Verify? Who wants anybody having the real story, or as much of the real story as they can possibly get, and then making their own decision? Maybe the logical decision wouldn't be the decision you want people coming to, so you just have to paint it a particular way so that it looks like his rights are truly being violated. So it looks like he was a person that we might have wanted in this country. And they literally admit he came in illegally. It's like, cool, case closed. He's here illegally. It's time for him to go. He's deported. That's what it is. So at what point is it time for someone to just stop being a headache and go? And I'm also tired of hearing the fact that he was deported in error, because the other thing is, their government in El Salvador also say that he's part of MS-13, so he needed to be deported. And if you don't believe me that it wasn't an error, ask White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller.
Nobody was mistakenly deported anywhere. That's like the big fact that most of you have gotten wrong.
Ask Tom Homan.
I don't accept the term error in Abrego Garcia.
They'll both tell you he was supposed to be deported. He just wasn't supposed to go back to El Salvador. Where are we supposed to send him, though? And maybe it is setting a good example for other illegals like him, that if you're doing stuff like that, or you've done stuff like that, you should get out of here before you possibly get sent to El Salvador. And also hearing people say, well, the courts have told Donald Trump that he needs to do something to facilitate bringing him home.
We are going to keep fighting to bring Abrego Garcia home.
Kilmar should be returned home.
Well, first off, I have a problem with the term home. He is home. El Salvador is where he's from. That's home. And most recently, home is the prison in El Salvador, which is where he belongs, because El Salvador doesn't want him in the streets again. So deal with your consequences, big boy. Just like when they're saying, oh, well, he couldn't go back to El Salvador because he would have faced harm from the rival gang. Well, don't be a part of a gang, stupid. If you don't want a rival gang coming after you, then don't be a part of a gang. And stop complaining about what your family went through, because your gang ended up putting some other family through that exact same thing, and you know it. And I really wasn't even going to talk about this subject, but I brought it up on a Carmelo Anthony video, and all I was saying was that the people that want to protest on the left need to be careful, because they've already gone rogue in the administration and started to take people, and they've got one guy in El Salvador that they're like, I can't get him. And the president of El Salvador is even like, yeah, I can't do anything about it either. And I was making a joke, and then I had several people in my comments like, he was a bad guy, but he was a bad guy, so he was a bad guy. which I half joke, but some of you, I know that's not my regular audience. That's like people that are new to the channel, because I wasn't saying he wasn't a bad guy. I was just using him as an example. The courts are telling the administration, you have to facilitate bringing this guy back. And they're like, sorry, no can do, bro. What do you think they're going to do to your ass if you do something stupid and illegal? It could lead to a serious consequence this time. We'll see what happens with the Tesla protesters. But some of you got so upset with me, like I was trying to say this is a good guy and he deserved to be here, and they did it wrongfully. And I hadn't said any of that. And you're all flatlining in the comments. I know he was a bad guy. Which, by the way, like, comment, and subscribe. I don't mind when you guys leave comments like that. I do laugh at them. But just the way they get so elevated in some cases, where people feel like they have to let me know that this was a bad guy. I definitely know, and I wasn't going to talk about it, like I said. But when I made that, people started leaving those comments. And then people have asked me in the comments to talk about this. And since it's something that I do have experience with, because when I was younger, I truly did hang out with gangbangers. Like, that's the thing. So when they say certain things like, well, he's never admitted to being a part of the gang, a lot of gang members would never admit to being part of the gang. There are a lot of people as well that are proud to be from a gang and will tell the police or anybody else because that's just what it is for them. They have to deal with their consequences or whatever, but they're owning what it is they are and what it is they're doing. But I didn't even know I was hanging out with gangbangers at first because I was semi-related to them. And since I was semi-related to them and I just moved to Phoenix, they were kind of my only friends. You know how a lot of times your family, if you have family, a particular place will be your friends. And that was kind of this situation. And so when I asked them, because I had been told by other people that they were part of a gang and they wore Raiders gear and they had all the signs of being a gang, like this guy Bulls, you know, like same thing. Every once in a while around or whatever. But I asked them outright, because, you know, guns around, I'm from a small town in Arizona, so guns around isn't even a bad thing or doesn't really mean a lot. I mean, yeah, it was rifles that I was used to in the town that I grew up in. Every once in a while, somebody would have a handgun too. And so when I was told I was hanging out with gangbangers, I outright asked them, because that's how innocent and dumb I was, that I outright asked them if they were in a gang, and they said that they weren't in a gang. And I ended up finding out that they were in a gang when I was hanging out at a house party at one of their houses, and I ended up getting hit by a stray bullet, a ricochet, during a drive-by. And I was off to the gay bars right after that. I was like, I'm not built for this gang life. Gay life is what I'm built for. No, but it was like, that was kind of a wake-up call for me or whatever. But I didn't know up until that point, and I had been hanging out with them for a couple of months. And so when they say that, you know, he's never admitted to it, a lot of people don't admit to it. So that to me, again, means absolutely nothing. And if you want to know why my friends lied to me, because I did ask them, why didn't you just tell me that you guys were in a gang? Because again, I was stupid and naive, so that's the way I just talk to people asking gangbangers, why didn't you tell me, you guys? Like, that's how much of a geek I was, you know? And I wasn't like, I didn't look like a geek or whatever, but that's how much I wasn't exposed to that life at all, like I said. And so when I asked them, they told me that it was because they didn't want their parents to find out. And since I was related to them, then I might have told their parents, and they didn't want me to snitch, so they didn't tell me. So if I have gangbangers that wouldn't snitch on themselves to me as their friend because they didn't want their parents to find out, you think that this guy wouldn't keep it a secret or never admit it because he doesn't want to leave his cushy spot in the United States? Can we talk sense, please? Can we at least try? And then they say stupid things like, well, they say that he was a part of the Western Clique, but the Western Clique is based in New York and he's never lived in New York. Have you never dealt with gangs on any level? Because I can tell you, every gang has some street or neighborhood that it reps or that's where it's based. Like, I remember when I was young, there was a particular gang that was the biggest gang in Arizona at that time, and they were claiming 35th Avenue. Not every member of that gang lived on 35th Ave. Some didn't even live in that part of town. And so how does it seem off to you that he could be part of a New York gang but not actually have lived in New York? Do you think New York doesn't need to do work in Maryland? Do you think they don't need a point guy in Maryland if they want to move something or if something needs to happen? How stupid are we? So I don't know exactly how much corroborating evidence we need in order to just be like, yeah, this guy is from MS-13. That's his gang. And it's unfortunate for him that he didn't take the hint and realize that he would not be a good candidate to stay in the United States with everything that he knows about himself and he knows about his history. If you ask me, the fact that he beat his wife alone should have got him sent back. If you're an American citizen and you want to beat your wife, that's your right. Who am I to step on the rights of another American? I don't tell other men what to do in their houses. What is this, 1984? Some sort of police state? A man can't figure out how to discipline his wife. Don't get mad at me. And definitely don't beat your wife. This was not at all a PSA, and I'm not seriously saying that. I'm having a little bit of fun because sometimes all this shit does get a bit heavy. But honestly, beating your wife alone tells me that you're not in line with the American way of life. Ideally, in the United States, we do not beat our wives. And unfortunately, there are people from this country that beat their wives. That's something that we're going to have to deal with as far as our citizens go. And they deserve to deal with stiff penalties. But at the same time, nobody should be encouraging this woman to be that bitch that's going to be lying for the man that beat her. Because that's what she's doing now. When they ask you if you were actually afraid of your husband at the time you had to file a restraining order on him, and the best you can give is, my husband is still alive.
Were you in fear of your husband?
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
What are you talking about? Because if it gets to restraining order, that's a pretty serious place. I've been restraining order. So stop trying to downplay it and make excuses for the motherfucker that's whooping your ass. I'm beginning to see why you needed your ass whooped. There, I said it. I didn't want to have to say it. I didn't want to hold my earrings. Just joking, but not joking at the same time. Be smarter than that, girl. She got a GoFundMe. I think it raised $300,000, they said. Take the money and run. I know you have to give lip service or else the gang will come after you, but if I were her in private, I'd be like, do not bring him back. He can stay over there. Last thing I need is him beating me again. Like, that's the way I would be if I were her. And I think the left, if they were really women's empowerment, would be like, girl, you'll be fine without him. That's right, you deserve that GoFundMe money because you're going to need to start your life on your own and you're used to living with the gangbanger and they usually do have money, so you're going to have to figure yourself out. But to me, women's empowerment would be like, girl, fuck him. This is his karma for beating you, is now he gets to be in an El Salvadorian prison, maybe get his ass beat a couple of times. When he comes out, he'll be a little more empathetic. Or is it sympathetic? But what I'm saying is, we do have enough reasons to know that he's not a good guy, and El Salvador does too, which to me is a good example of the president of El Salvador actually taking some accountability and being like, this one's our mess. This is our responsibility. We'll take it from here. But then the courts are like, bring him back. Now, could you imagine if that was a reverse situation? Could you imagine if El Salvador had one of our criminals and then they got him, brought him back to us, and then said, hey, we need him after all? Why? So he can possibly end up our problem again? Because if you set him free after this, when we both already have him, or you technically have him now, but if you set him free on any level, who's to say that he's not going to make a run for it and then he ends up being El Salvador's problem again somehow, like makes his way back? And stranger things have happened, so don't act like I'm being crazy. I mean, El Chapo once pulled a disappearing act, if you don't remember, and they were really high security. So you don't know what's going to happen if you decide to do it that way. And knowing the way the Democrats are, they're going to demand that he be able to go home with his wife while they run through the process. That's what they're going to try to do if anybody were to ever bring him back, which I really don't believe that President Trump or the president of El Salvador are going to let him come back. I really don't see that happening on any level, and there's really no reason they should. He's going to be deported if he comes back. So why do we have to take the extra step of trying to talk to the president of El Salvador and saying, hey, can you bring us our/your criminal back, please? We're going to need to give him due process. And so yeah, knowing everything is done and knowing El Salvador knows everything he's done, we're supposed to have President Trump negotiate with Bukele to bring him back. That makes total sense. 100%. That's what we're going to do. That's what I'm going to campaign for. And I don't understand why people are rallying around this type of person instead of just being like, yeah, that element does need to go. There are enough arrows pointing to the fact that this isn't a good person. You're in this country illegally. You're loitering. There's a murder investigation that they're really trying to do, which that's what I would imagine by the wording of what it said, was they probably didn't have enough reason to bring those 3 guys in to ask about that murder outright or make that their reason for picking them up. But then if they had the excuse of catching them loitering and were able to lock them up and give them the squeeze from there, that might have seemed like a better strategy to them. That would make sense to me, and I don't have a problem with that kind of police work, to tell you the truth. I know some people will probably say something about violating rights or whatever else. These are MS-13 gang members, and I have lived in an MS-13 neighborhood. I lived there for 4 years. It was from 2013 to 2017, and it was not an MS-13 neighborhood. It was probably the MS-13, not to brag, not to flex. It's MacArthur Park, LA, and I literally was 1 block from MacArthur Park. There's these apartments on 6th and Westlake, and I was right there. MacArthur Park is on 6th and Alvarado, 1 block away. And I used to take my puppies for walks in MacArthur Park every single day. And it's one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in LA, but I was always walking my dogs in MacArthur Park during the day. You knew not to be in MacArthur Park after hours. After it got dark, you do not go into MacArthur Park. But I used to go every single day. Literally, it would be rare if we missed a day. And my dog, the little puppy, Bijou, a little Chihuahua, so cute, just passed away not too long ago, but let's not dwell. But she was my baby, but she had friends that were MS-13. That bitch was gang related. I'm glad she died technically, because I think Trump would have had some questions for her. They could have possibly taken my dog to see caught, because she legitimately had MS-13 friends, you know. I don't know why. Then they were the legit, like, you know, all the tattoos, and really, I like the whole time they'd be petting her, I'd be like, you're gonna get us killed, you crazy bitch. But they would pet her, and I would stand a healthy distance back, because it really is, I joke, but it really is dangerous living in an MS-13 neighborhood. And that's why I say you couldn't possibly say that you love immigrants, whether legal or illegal, and then want people like this that are part of MS-13, any part of MS-13, in any neighborhood that is inhabited by immigrants. Because while it may be dangerous to a degree to people like me and you, if you're an actual American, you have recourse. You can call the police. You can do something about it if somebody from the gang is harassing you. If you're an immigrant and they decide that they want to tax your business, you're getting your business taxed, because most immigrants aren't going to feel comfortable calling the police, even if they've got certain things in order, and even if they're in a sanctuary city. That's just the way that it works. When you're living in that kind of neighborhood, those things happen all the time to immigrants. So if you're saying like, oh, I want these people to stick around because I love immigrants, you don't love immigrants if you want them around that kind of element. Because while they'll do things to us or try to do things to us occasionally, they know that there is a different consequence as opposed to when they're dealing with other immigrants. So they're really able to run the immigrant neighborhood, and they terrorize. Like if you look up MacArthur Park specifically, there's like videos that say like the most dangerous neighborhood in LA, things like that. Like that's how much of an MS-13 neighborhood that was. And so I know the reality of living in that kind of neighborhood, even if I don't live the reality while I'm in that neighborhood. Because like I said, there's certain things that I would just see that didn't make sense or hear about, but they wouldn't involve me in it because I'm a United States citizen. So it is a little bit different. But if you're able to ever actually see the way those things work, you know how terrible people like this are. So I don't really know on whose behalf this is supposed to be helpful, but I'm just sick of all of this shit, and everybody can 100% go back, and I don't care, and I'm not gonna have a heart about it. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments. If you want to see a video of me talking about Roger, our favorite mooch from TikTok, click the video on your screen. Other than that, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.